Since the United States implemented a tariff-based trade regime on the global stage in 2024, there has been a significant transformation in the world's economic architecture. This chapter delves into the impact of tariffs on consumer behavior in the United States and their broader implications for the evolving global economic framework. Our analysis will center on how these changes affect the concept of trade, economic dominance, within this new economic structure, a notion that is still in the process of being defined. This is likely due to the ongoing evolution of the economic architecture, which is being shaped by the collaborative efforts of multiple nations rather than solely by the United States. If analysts determine that U.S. influence has waned, this perspective may gain wider acceptance. However, many analysts are highlighting the rapid ascent of China, which has expanded its market access with numerous countries and is making significant investments to solidify its dominance. This analysis comes with inherent risks, as the evolving economic landscape may require new tools and metrics to accurately evaluate and gauge the economic dominance of nations. Many current analyses and narratives are rooted in the traditional economic architecture, focusing on identifying winners and losers based on criteria that historically defined U.S. dominance. These criteria include market share in various sectors, trade share, corporate investments, and funding for diverse projects. Success under the old order was determined by a nation's ability to secure market access for its goods, identify profitable investment opportunities, and exert control or influence over projects. China has made significant progress by these standards, but the term dominance may not fully apply yet. It is crucial to delve into the reasons behind this evolving landscape. The traditional economic framework relied heavily on unchecked consumption, with the insatiable demand of American consumers as its foundation and a key factor in evaluating the nation's economic power. Moreover, the United States' dominance in foreign investments and loans to various countries empowered American corporations to wield significant influence over global projects. Many of these ventures were sustained by U.S. consumption, which provided the resources for repayment. The consumer-centric economy in the U.S., marked by a use and discard mindset, facilitated a surge in consumption. This environment enabled U.S. corporations and some of their rivals to expand production both at home and abroad, fueling the economic growth of Western Europe, Japan, and the East Asian tigers. As production increasingly moved to more cost-effective and higher-quality locations, the U.S. attempted to bring some manufacturing back home, but these efforts were largely unsuccessful. Recognizing that manufacturing would likely continue to shift to low-cost regions, the U.S. shifted its focus to the service sector. This transition was supported by access to inexpensive capital and technology-driven monopolies, allowing the U.S. to dominate global markets. Government policies, such as attracting international talent and risk capital, fostering a robust venture capital environment with a high risk tolerance, and maintaining low taxation despite a significant deficit, further fueled the growth of the service industries. As a result, the consumer-driven economy continued to thrive, even as domestic production capabilities declined. The persistent aversion of both the populace and the government to pollution-intensive manufacturing industries also contributed to this decline. This shift paved the way for China to emerge as a dominant, low-cost producer of goods, establishing its global leadership in manufacturing. China has become a global leader in production by implementing a sophisticated system of policies, taxation, and subsidies across various industries. Through nurturing its industry leaders, China has mastered a wide range of production processes crucial to supply chains, establishing itself as a dominant force. Starting with basic assembly and labor-intensive tasks, China quickly evolved into a powerhouse in production, outpacing Western Europe and East Asia in multiple sectors. This shift has allowed China to maintain trade surpluses with many countries, exporting sought-after manufactured goods while importing raw materials and semi-finished products. Many renowned global corporations have found that producing their widgets in China and exporting them to various overseas markets is a more competitive option. Chinese corporations and brands have been steadily gaining ground against established global brands, capturing significant market shares in different markets. Initially hesitant to shift all production to China, Western corporations eventually had to move most production processes to low-cost China to keep up with the cost-based competition from China. This solidified China's dominance, supported by the government's investments in infrastructure and global supply chain development. Chinese production houses can competitively source raw materials and sell finished goods in multiple markets. China also focused on developing its capital goods and heavy industries through reverse engineering and improving systems and subassemblies. Some European and Japanese companies willingly shifted production to China due to its cost effectiveness, sometimes at the expense of their domestic units. China has recently invested heavily in research and development to innovate new technologies and products, empowering domestic corporations with greater ambitions. Chinese companies are now acquiring Western counterparts with established brands, transitioning from vendors to brand owners and manufacturers, distributors. This strengthens the leverage of Chinese corporations and raises concerns in the West about China's rise. China has become the largest exporter to over half of the world's nations and ranks in the top 3 importers from these nations. Chinese corporations are among the top 3 investor nations and have taken leadership positions in industries such as solar panels, wind turbines, battery electric vehicles, construction and commercial vehicles, industrial machinery, electronics, and toys. It is worth noting that while China experienced significant growth in its manufacturing sector, it protected its services sector from foreign competition. Instead of allowing global or U.S. corporations free access to its markets, China developed its own parallel corporations, such as Alibaba as an alternative to Amazon and eBay, Baidu as a counterpart to Google, TikTok as a rival to YouTube and Instagram, Didi as a competitor to Uber, and Alipay and other services as alternatives to PayPal and GPay. These companies thrived in the protected Chinese market and benefited from the rapid technological advancements in the country's manufacturing sector. China has made substantial investments in telecommunications and information technology, often facing accusations of plagiarism and patent violations, despite its claims of original research and innovation. Chinese corporations are expanding into biotechnology, gene technology, aircraft manufacturing, and aero engines to compete with Western counterparts. Some Chinese companies have gone global by listing on U.S. securities markets to raise capital or using wealth accumulated from trade surpluses. However, Chinese companies face stiff competition from more innovative Western firms that have established themselves in many markets. U.S. corporations have been collaborating with multiple countries to establish rules that could disadvantage Chinese competitors. The evolving dynamics in this sector will be interesting to watch, as it could potentially lead to economic dominance by one side. Given this context, let's delve into the assertion that China has significantly increased its influence, but has not yet achieved economic dominance. This statement may pique the interest of many podcast listeners. While China has indeed emerged as a major player in the manufacturing sector, it has not reached the status of being the primary consumer. Many of its trading partners view China as a mercantilist power with a strong demand for raw materials, mass-produced components, and subassemblies. Recently, Chinese companies have started supplying components and subassemblies to large and mid-sized manufacturers in various developed and emerging markets where local companies face challenges. This has allowed Chinese companies to outcompete smaller manufacturers in these markets by leveraging economies of scale, advanced technology, and efficient supply chains. Some may interpret this as Chinese dominance, overlooking the political repercussions it has triggered. Chinese firms argue that their support for exports and competitiveness benefits the nation's economy and saves jobs. While many nations and their corporations now rely on Chinese components, they may still prefer working with U.S. companies to enhance their domestic supply chains and boost competitiveness. This preference stems from limited access to the Chinese market for their products, creating a one-way dependency on China for components and sub-assemblies. Despite having a population 5 times larger than the US, China imports only half as much and has a high savings rate, indicating lower levels of consumerism compared to the US. Therefore, China is unlikely to become the ultimate customer in the near to mid-term, limiting its influence and dominance. The ongoing trade war reflects this struggle, as governments worldwide aim to bring back more production within their borders through new policies. Developed nations seeking to reclaim lost production and emerging economies aspiring to boost domestic manufacturing are driving this shift. The US used its differential tariff-based strategy to compel many nations into trade agreements, allowing US corporations to access their industries in exchange for tariff agreements that ensured continued market access for domestic manufacturing. China's major trade partners also agreed to policies that imposed penal tariffs on products re-exported to the US without significant value addition, signaling a shift towards more localized manufacturing. As the US reduces its trade deficit with these nations through tariffs, they may need to address their own deficit with China, leading to increased Chinese investment in local value addition in manufacturing industries. This fragmentation of manufacturing across multiple nations, supported by technologies like Industry 4, is likely to diminish monopolies in industries such as critical minerals and erode dominant positions in various sectors. The future will see a surge in substitute products for Chinese goods and the emergence of new suppliers from different countries. Cost leadership in manufacturing will become less significant in the next 3 to 5 years as many players achieve similar production costs. The availability of competitive sources for similar products will empower consumer nations to negotiate trade terms. Despite these changes, China's influence as a major consumer nation may persist, even as its dominance as a production powerhouse diminishes. This leads us to consider what would define dominance in the new economic architecture. It is important to understand that tariffs act as a tax on consumption, particularly on imported goods. This is likely to result in a general increase in prices, even if not explicitly stated. Consequently, this could influence consumer behavior towards more mindful spending. Additionally, the imposition of varying tariffs on different countries may alter import sourcing strategies. U.S. investors may also reevaluate production and sourcing decisions to countries with lower duties and overall lower costs for U.S. consumers. As these changes take effect, it is crucial to analyze economic power and national rankings. 1. The first factor is the technology race and the competitive position of nations in advancing new technologies and utilizing them innovatively across different regions. China and the US are closely matched in this area. It is important to note that the development of technology and innovation is closely linked to the education and skilling systems in various countries, particularly in higher education. China has developed a strong higher education system that is gradually narrowing the gap with the US university system. The impact of current U.S. policies on the strength of its university system remains uncertain. Technology will play a crucial role in determining the economic dominance of nations, although it is not the only factor. 2. The second factor is the power of brands. Strong brands provide significant support to businesses, as consumers are drawn to well-known brands whose promises are easily understood. Currently, U.S. corporations lead in this aspect, with the European Union potentially on par or even ahead of Chinese corporations. However, in sectors such as solar panels and electric vehicles, Chinese brands are emerging as strong competitors. As more manufacturers enter the market, competition intensifies, leading to the adoption of new strategies to gain market share. 3. The third factor to consider is the ability to adapt and customize. With a decrease in the importance of mass production, corporations would focus on offering more customized products tailored to different nations. Nations would establish policies and standards to support their domestic manufacturers, protect local jobs, and ensure consumer protection. Products would be manufactured to meet domestic standards and quality expectations in each nation. Western corporations may have an advantage due to their experience in working with various governments, but Chinese companies have also gained expertise and offer competitive pricing. 4. Another important factor is the ability to provide flexible payment terms and comprehensive trade packages to nations. This aspect may lead to competition among multiple producers vying for influence in customer nations. As new producers emerge globally, particularly in direct competition with China, this area is expected to evolve. The dynamics of trade agreements are rapidly changing, with smaller nations engaging in significant trade deals that often go unnoticed in mainstream news. 5. The availability of mineral resources and access to markets will also play a role in shaping trade relationships. Nations with abundant mineral resources may demand local value addition from suppliers seeking steady mineral supplies. Similarly, countries with large domestic markets for specific products can also require local value addition. While China has attracted Western manufacturers due to its vast domestic market and cost competitiveness, the significance of cost alone is diminishing in the evolving trade landscape. Varied duty structures and trade agreements between nations will impact the importance of cost competitiveness in the future. 6. Infrastructure and trade route development are key factors that can determine the economic dominance of nations as they strive to access markets in a competitive manner. China's investments in infrastructure across multiple nations to secure mineral resources and market access serve as a model for other countries to emulate. 7. The cost and policies surrounding energy also play a crucial role in economic dominance. China excels in producing goods that facilitate the transition from traditional energy sources to renewable ones, such as solar panels and battery-powered vehicles. Emerging technologies like sodium-ion cells, developed in China and other advanced nations, are shaping the future of energy consumption. Countries like Brazil and India are also pioneering the development of agricultural-based alternative fuels, with Brazil focusing on methanol-based vehicles and India exploring a blend of agricultural and traditional fuels. The success and widespread adoption of these technologies and policies could significantly impact a nation's economic standing. Energy prices and accessibility have historically influenced trade and economic development, and this trend is expected to continue. The definition of energy sources will expand as nations leverage their available resources for development. Trade and economic dominance is a multifaceted topic that is influenced by various factors. While this chapter covers some of the major aspects, it does not delve into all the complexities or potential risks that could impact the subject. It is important to consider the political landscape and uncertainties that could affect trade and economic policies. The sustainability of the current U.S. tariff stance is uncertain, given the backlash within the country against these policies. The political implications of any significant setbacks for the current administration in the midterm elections remain a question mark. While there has been opposition to anti-MAGA sentiments, there has been less visible protest against tariffs that are likely to affect U.S. consumers. If there is no political upheaval, the continuation of tariff policies is probable and may receive bipartisan support. B. The Sino-Russian axis, while currently a loose security agreement, has not seen significant progress in trade or payment agreements with other nations. However, if more emerging nations align with this axis and it gains strength to challenge the dominance of the US dollar, it could have a substantial impact on economic dominance. This would require adjustments within China and Russia, as they have differing interests in manufacturing and exports. C. The policies of East Asian and European nations are also crucial, as they are major manufacturing and consumption centers. East Asia aims to become a leading manufacturing hub, with exports driving its growth. However, limited market access to the U.S. and competition from China pose challenges. Europe also faces difficulties in competing with China and accessing the U.S. market. The growth strategies adopted by these regions in the current global environment will be significant. D. There would be questions about consumption preferences in resource and energy-rich nations. Will they prefer cost-effective products from China or opt for branded items? Moreover, what if branded products become more affordable but are sourced from non-traditional sources? E. Similarly, there would be questions about the development paths of larger emerging market nations. Will they choose to partner with China and adapt rules and regulations that favor Chinese enterprises? Or will they maintain their current regulatory culture, which is largely influenced by the West?